In this video, I want to give you a clear difference between strategic and tactical thinking. At its essence, strategic deals with the what, and tactical deals with the how. But I'm going to give you two other ways to really find the distinctions in language and in conversations and in situations and how you can use them. So let's jump right in. Now, the core challenge here, the reason why we even have to talk about strategic and tactical thinking is because there are two types of approaching problems or challenges, and one makes sense for some and the other makes sense for the other. And if you use the wrong kind of thinking on the wrong kind of problem, you're really gonna end up with frustration, wasted effort, wasted time. And this is how companies can end up really sort of chasing their own tail. They're trying to tackle something tactically that should be done strategically, or you're thinking too strategically when it's time to think tactically. You can't really formulate strategy tactically because that's planning. And I have another video where I talk about the difference between planning and strategy. And of course, you can't implement strategy by thinking strategically, you have to do it tactically. So finding the right kind of thinking and be able to switch between the two modes is really important, especially as you go up in your career, you become a leader, you become an executive, and you have responsibility over a unit or an organization. So let me give you three distinctions so you can know if your team or yourself is thinking strategically or tactically. The first, which I mentioned at the introduction of the video, is the what versus the how. When you figure out what you want to do, you're thinking strategically, and when you're trying to figure out how to do it, you're thinking tactically. So for example, an organization may decide that what they want to do is improve their technology. This is a strategic area. They want to acquire certain technology skills or vendors, and it's going to help them have a competitive advantage in the marketplace. That's the what, technology. How you do it starts to become the details. Which vendors do you go after? What skills do you need? What's the best way to acquire these vendors? How you roll out the vendors? What does it mean to level up your people from a technology perspective, right? Details on the bigger what. That's the first distinction. The second distinction is easy versus hard answers. Generally speaking, strategic decisions are hard. They require discussion. I worked with an organization that was doing some work in the political environment, and they were trying to figure out how to expand to multiple chapters. The strategic decision of how to expand or how to really handle this expansion was hard because there was even a question of whether they should do it at all. Should they expand? Is this really the best way to grow the organization, right? The how, when they decided at the end, was really just about the details. Okay, if we're gonna do the expansion in this manner, then we need to find this kind of people, we need to define these kind of processes, we need to find this kind of funding, and so on. So easy versus hard answers. Tactical decisions are straightforward. It's really just a matter of figuring out step one, step two, step three, but the strategic ones require debate and discussion, and it requires some kind of thinking to understand if this is even the right approach at all. And the third distinction that you can use is the short versus the long-term impact. Just like before, strategic decisions tend to have a much longer impact. Again, if you go back to the example, deciding if the organization should expand or not expand is going to be a decision that will play out over multiple years. The kind of impact of that decision. Deciding to handle something tactically, for example, do you develop this kind of process to make the expansion easier, is going to be a shorter impact. It might be weeks, months maybe, but you can roll it back, you can try something else. So if you're dealing with something that's going to have invariably a short impact, you're likely dealing with something tactically. If you're dealing with something that's going to be a larger strategic impact, you're dealing with something that is strategic. Now, we're halfway through the video. I just want to make a note that you should subscribe, like, and comment in the YouTube channel if you like these ideas. You'll find them helpful, and there's other videos where you can continue to dive deeper into how to be more strategic, how to formulate strategy, what does it mean to go through it. So hit the subscribe button and let's move on. So let's take a real world example. Let's look at Starbucks, one of my favorite organizations. As a customer and as someone who thinks about strategy often. Starbucks has many decisions to make. Some are strategic and some are tactical. The strategic decisions that Starbucks has to figure out are the following. They are seeing the death of their third home concept. Initially, Starbucks was set up around an idea that it could be your third home. You have your actual home, your office, and then the coffee shop is a place where you go, you hang out, you read, you spend time with friends. That's going away. There's ever more demand for takeout orders. You see more drive-thrus. You even see walkthroughs being developed. So what does that mean for a company that has designed many other stores around a home, a third home, when people don't want to spend time there, they just want to go through? What does that mean for store design? What does that mean for the type of stores you open, right? We start to talk a little bit about the tactical here, but this is a strategic decision. How do you deal with the third home? The second one is they have more complex orders. The mobile app accelerated some of this. You can now have very, very complex orders in a business that's kind of known for complexity. People asking for their half sugar, half sweet, half soy, half cream, and so on. But that complexity is increasing, which means it takes longer to make the orders. And if you couple that with more takeout orders, which means more orders, then it's even more pressure on the stores. And that leads to some of the third option, which is labor relations. You're seeing more and more union efforts at Starbucks being driven by some of these facts. Baristas feel that the environment is becoming ever tougher, right? There's ever more demand on the work they have to do in a tighter time frame. What does that mean? So these are all the strategic decisions that Starbucks has to make in some shape or form. There's no easy answers. They're really all about the long term, right? Bringing those distinctions, and they're really about the what. On the other hand, when we go into the tactical thinking, once Starbucks makes those decisions, then they can decide on a few things. What's sort of the best layout for walkthrough stores, right? They'll roll them out, they'll try different formats, they'll experiment, and they'll find the best way to move forward. What's the best format for drive-thrus, right? They're going to roll them out, they'll try them, they'll experiment, they'll change the layouts. All kinds of tactical decisions there that are small or large, but they're all, straightforward. Try this, does it work? No. Try again, does that work? Try again, and so on. And even with the employee relations, they'll try different things. Does this compensation plan help? Does this kind of bonuses help? If we change the environment, does that help? Again, tactical, right? Try it, doesn't work. Try it, doesn't work. So we start to see the differences in a company that has to make strategic decisions and one in which has to make tactical decisions. So, actionable advice. So take this to your regular work week, to your upcoming meetings. First, you want to just make clear if you're talking about something strategic or tactical. So if you're in a meeting and it sounds like you're trying to discuss the what, make it clear. Hey, we're talking about strategy. And if you start to dive into the weeds, into the tactics, you can pause it and say, you know what? We need to figure out the what first, and then we'll do the how. We need to figure out the hard answer, and then we can do the easy answers. Or we need to really figure out the long term, and then we'll figure out the short term. It's always helpful to practice the styles of thinking, so play it out, right? Try to find those distinctions and then say, okay, this is the strategic, now let me do the tactical, let me go back to the strategic. You want to get comfortable with it. But just be able to call out the distinctions is likely one of the small things you can do to bring a more structured way of approaching conversations and make it clear to everybody, this is what we're discussing and this is what we're not discussing. So that's it. My name is Ruben Ugarte. I'm an expert in strategic decisions. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. There's plenty of videos coming up where I share the work that I do with organizations to help them be more strategic, to make better strategic decisions, and of course, for helping leaders themselves handle the ever complexity of strategy. In the description box below, there's a few links I want you to check out. First is my newsletter on Substack. I really love writing this. It goes out every Tuesday at 5 a.m. Pacific time, and it gives you 3 ideas to make better strategic decisions this week. So check that out. There's also a link to my website. You can find other resources, some of the books I've written on data and decisions, which I think you'll find helpful. And in the comment section below, let me know what kind of thinking do you feel the most comfortable with and why. Just share that. I'd love to hear that. Until next time, talk soon.